Welcome to another video today. The fit for today is the KTOD Rebel Resource Edition t-shirt. And today I'm going to be going through my Cunning Sabine Shadows of the Galaxy deck to deck tech and what I think is going to get me a win at GenCon. Let's dig in. All right, so I got a pretty unique take on this deck, and I'm sure some of you are going to be down in the comments saying, why aren't you playing this, and this, and this? And I will address that before I even get into the deck tech. So let's take a look at the deck. Playing a fair amount of set 2 cards here. Still have a core shell of Rebel package, which we're going to go into a breakdown, especially for those who have not been here for the deck. And we're going to notice something right off the bat. Where are Poe and Recker? They are not in this deck. And there is a very, very specific reason as to why that is the case. All right, so why no Poe and Recker before you go into the comments? Just give me a second. All right, I don't want Poe to be bad when he is, and this is a message I sent in my private testing group with some experienced players. And the reality is Poe without sneak attack, which is a very Christmas landy situation to have this card and this card at the same time in your hand, and then it's good. Or then it's really good. He just doesn't do anything in Yellow Sabine when played. All right, so that is something you're gonna either hear from me on this video is when played abilities or immediate board impact. Poe has an extremely high threshold of being punished against experienced players. If I play Poe on 5 resources and don't ECL him, like in Green Sabine, he gets waylaid, he can get Cantina bouncered, he can get killed by Boba Fett leader unit with the Boba Fett armor. If my opponent has 4 llama on the field, Zuckuss kills Poe. He could die from a counter ECL. Doesn't really get through Sentinels, even if I do play him. And they play a 2/2 shielded Sentinel. I have to go through that Sentinel with Poe and use his entire attack. And so he just doesn't do enough to win me the game. Poe is a good card in other decks, don't get me wrong. And the reality is all of these cards are probably going to see a lot of meta play. It's really annoying that a 2/2 shielded Sentinel can blink one of the best legendaries printed in my deck, but that is the case. And if I sneak attack Poe in, yes, he does get in for 8 damage by discarding a card, but guess what gets in for 1 less damage? K2SO, and he only costs 3 resources to sneak attack, and he does 7 damage. There are better sneak attack targets in the deck already. I don't need Poe to sneak attack. It's just not necessary. In Green Sabine, Poe does a lot more, and so does Recker. Recker is very, very good because he does do something when he hits the board, but I found that he's, in my opinion, far better in the deck than Poe is. But there's a reason why I have a different 6-drop in the deck and 4 drops in the deck, which I'm going to get to. Yeah, so, why play Poe for 5 resources when I can Falcon and Surprise Strike to base for 6? And then let's say Poe does attack next turn for 8. Falcon gets in for 3 more. So Falcon got in for 9 damage, a lot less resources, a lot more flexible of a card. I was able to play more cards, have more options, more play lines instead of soaking up my entire turn into 5 resources. Again, you may not agree with that, but I'm telling you, I've tested against some very experienced players in this game that have, they're in master classes and stuff like that. They're very, very experienced. And when I play Poe into them, a lot of times I'm losing games. And so because of what Poe is doing and how it can be countered by experienced players, if you're going to go to your local meta, go ahead, play Poe. I'm just saying at top level tables, people are going to have main deck answers for cards like this that they know need to be answered. And that's what you're going to experience. And so this is the last thing I'll say here. Poe is one of the best cards printed in set 2, but a Yellow Sabine deck is a fancy space deck. If Poe is a 5/5 for 5 with the same abilities in space, I'd be playing it, but he's so much better in Green Sabine. I don't want to import that performance into this deck. And Recker is much better, but he falls prey to some of the similar situations where like a shielded Sentinel can just stop him from doing anything. And I'm playing the 6-drop Falcon instead, which we'll get to in a little bit. All right, so now when I got the controversial spicy take out of the way, we're going to go through some of the staples here. R2-D2, I'm playing 2 copies of this now instead of 1 from set 1. The reason why is just having more 1-drops to play double 1-drops. What we want to do is this deck can take over the board in a way that Green Sabine can't. I can be in both arenas I can have a strong presence in both arenas on turn 1, which cannot be answered by any deck in the game. There's no card in the game. If you're able to do that, you're going to maintain board presence probably into turn 3. What really sucks for Green Sabine or even Yellow Sabine sometimes is when your turn 1 and your turn 2 play are answered. You're losing the game. You're losing the tempo that the deck wants to do. R2 is also a rebel, so it guarantees that there's very little ways to kill R2D2 on turn 2 without wasting a bunch of resources. And R2 is a great fleet lieutenant target, a great wing leader target. He is a rebel, so that is nice. Also, that filtering is so good. It is probably why you play this card. Man, if you're a good player and you know what you need, you just scry for the answers, and it's so nice. Especially if you're thinking a couple turns ahead. The more reps you get with a deck like this, R2 gets better and better because you're getting better with the card. Spec Force, obviously 2 in the deck, get rid of Sentinels, it's a rebel. Cartel Turncoat, here we go. Double turn 1 plays. We're playing 3 of these in 2 Spec Force, 2 R2s. Basically, this card is really good, not just as a turn 1 play. Let's say you only have Cartel Turncoat and a bunch of 2-drops. Don't play the turncoat. You can resource it, but even if you draw it later, what you can do is on your 4 resource turn, you can use it as a curve filler. So if you wing leader on 4 resources in wing leader Sabine, making Sabine a 4/7, then you can play Cartel Turncoat. And it is very like when I play that way, a lot of times my opponents are like, oh my goodness, like I didn't expect you to play another 2 power, 3 toughness unit in space. It's just overwhelming, and you can swarm the board, and you want to swarm early. This card is not great late. That is 100% for certain. But additionally, it being double aspect is very relevant because I found that I can turn the Sabine aspect ability online, which we'll get to in a little bit. Also, being 3 toughness is kind of hard to kill. Like, there's not a lot of 1 damage stuff that can kill it. And the bounty is not that big of a downside. We just play it. And Heroic Sacrifice here to pump and dig. Heroic Sacrifice is super good late game. It's good, mid game to take care of a problematic unit. And then, Heroic Sacrifice can help you dig for a cause if that's what you're looking for to puzzle a win in that matchup. All right, so Leia, she's a pseudo 1-drop because you can play her for 2, untap for 1. And so she also helps us hit that double turn 1 play. She's also a rebel, and she also is really good late game by tapping down a key restore unit or a key damage. If my opponent plays Poe or a Dark-Sabered Sabine or they play Recker, I can take initiative, play Leia, not worry about it, and hopefully win that turn when they would have been able to puzzle together a victory. I'm able to tempo them out and end up winning. And Leia's just because she's so good early game and late game, I think she's one of the best cards in these color pairings. And it also rewards high skill players in terms of knowing what your opponent's playing and being able to tap it down to basically nullify it for a turn. In a shared turn game, Leia is very strong. All right, Alliance X-Wing and A-Wing, space. Nothing much to say. These are the same. We're playing actually 3 of each. The reason being we were playing only 2 X-Wings before, but ground really got some nutty Sentinels. The 2/2 shielded Sentinel Village Protectors, it's just ridiculous. And space does have better Sentinels in set 2, but not as good as ground. And ground has a lot more answers. Just in general, the cards got very, very strong, right, in ground, and space got better, but not by a massive amount. And so my take is I still think space is the way to go. It's going to be where aggro is going to have less disruption in general, and it's going to force our opponent to play a bit different into other decks, where like Green Sabine, for example, would play a lot more ground than space. And we're just able to not worry about some of those answers like Zuckuss and stuff. Yeah, you can kill my Sabine, but I've been finding myself not even deploying Sabine because I have so many units out that if they're passing to pop my Sabine, I can just take initiative and, deploy her later, or I can wait to draw a Spec Force to blank their Sentinel and then deploy her when they take initiative and hit for 3-4 damage to base. All right, Sabine, I was talking about this earlier. That aspect ability is online so much more because that Cartel Turncoat is a 1-drop double aspect unit. And so if I play that, with an A-Wing on turn 2, Sabine becomes invincible for pretty much most of the game. And what I mean by that is because they can't kill her or ambush her, she just sticks around long enough where we win by turn 4-5, because having a Sabine out on turn 1 that lives the whole game is kind of how you win the game. Also allows us to lane dodge by having another 2-drop in ground. Leia R2 is a very viable double rebel turn 1 play. Sabine turn 1, if they play a space unit like the Mercenary Gunship, the 3/2 colorless card, we can just lane dodge and then we can just go into ground. So there's not a ton of ground, but I do like Sabine because she can pull together these interesting play lines, even late game when you play a Sabine and you have like a space board and your opponent has a full ground board. But if you have a Falcon and an A-Wing out there, Sabine's invincible. She cannot be targeted by units. And so that ends up winning a lot of games. All right, Surprise Strike, Pump, not much to say there, very strong. And then Sneak Attack, same thing that we had in set 1. It's a curve filler where if we have a weird amount of resources left, we can play Sneak Attack to cheat in something like a Wing Leader or a Fleet Lieutenant and still get damage in, still push to face and dump our hand and be aggressive, right? Be aggressive. So that is Yellow Sabine. It's a very fast deck and it's very tricky and agile, and it does kind of play mind games even with good players. Like, oh, if they have Sneak Attack, I lose. Like, I have to do this. And it's like, I don't have it. But if I did, they had to play around it, and they know I'm playing it because this deck is, well known to be playing Sneak Attack. So just one bummer is I really want to get these in Hyperspace Foil, but I cannot find them at my locals, and they're like $20 a pop or something crazy like that. So that's just one downside. All right, so 3 drops. Let's move on here. Not much to say other than Rebel Package is too strong. There's a reason why Green Sabine is still playing Rebels. I tried many versions of Yellow Sabine. I've tried the Underworld version, not good enough. I've tried let's just play good stuff, yellow, fast, not care about Rebels, not good enough. The reason why is Fleet Lieutenant is by one of the most broken cards in the game. Why is that? It's a 3-drop that has a relevant trait or typal. And it does 3 things when it's played. Not many cards do that in this game. So 1, it's a unit. So that's one thing it does. It provides itself its own board presence. 2, it cheats an action, right? And 3, it also adds pump depending on its target. That is potentially 3 things that a turn 2 play does. This card is insanely good, very broken. The fact that a card can do that in a game where that is shared actions, you're doing 3 things in one card, very strong. Red 3, again, this is a swarm deck, so I think Red 3 is actually better in this deck than it is in Green Sabine because we have the turncoats, we have the R2s, the Leias, and there's sometimes where I'll have like 4 units out and I'll play a Red 3 and it's like I got Sabine, an R2, a turncoat, a Leia, and like Red 3, and it's like, holy moly, they're at 22 damage at the end of like the Sabine flip. And they're like actively killing my stuff, but they just can't deal with all of it. They can only do one thing a turn usually. And so Red 3 actually is much better in this deck than it is in other decks because of the turncoat being so strong, attacking for 3 as a 1-drop. Like, man, I've had so many games where I play double turncoat and then I play a Red 3 and they just didn't have the space presence. They had like Make an Opening, which doesn't kill anything. And then I get in for like, I think, 6 to 7 damage on turn 2. And then, turn 3, I'm just like, they're at 20 plus damage. It's very strong. Wing Leader is also very, very good still. Being able to add experience tokens to the board and get out of range of a lot of these Sentinels, or even play them on a space unit so you can get through the Concord Dawn Interceptor. That Sentinel is the bane of this deck. The 1/4 blue-white Sentinel. When it's attacked, it gets +2 attack, and it's a space unit. So it's got 3 power when it's attacked and kills all of our space units besides Falcon, which we have some answers for that. But Wing Leader is one answer, main deck, where we can just pump up an A-Wing or an Alliance X-Wing, and we can blow through it and kill it and still have our unit, which is nice. Next is fast damage. Falcon and 4 Cause, not much to say here other than these are still doing what they did in set 1. They're, readied damage from hand, meaning 4 Cause does immediate damage and Falcon does, immediate damage that's 1 action slower. And it has a little bit, if they have Sentinels and stuff like that, it doesn't work. But functionally, it's fast damage. We want to basically continue to push fast damage to base and win. And then that 4 Toughness is still relevant. That 4 Toughness does get around a lot of the early space plays still. And, if they play the pirated 3/2 Black Sentinel in space, you just play Falcon, kill it, your Falcon lives, then you attack with your turn 1 play. you know, they lost their turn 2 play, you got to keep yours, and you just continue pushing damage to base. And so here is what's replacing Poe. I had 2 Poes in this deck, and I took them out for 2 Cassians. And you might say, what? You might say, what are you thinking? What about Poe? So first off, if I don't have Rebels turn 1, that means that Fleet Lieutenant is not playable in Wing Leader. So if I have like Cartel Turncoat, that means I can't play Wing Leader and Fleet Lieutenant on turn 2 because I have no Rebels. So Cassian is a great turn 2 play if that's the case. He is a Rebel. He's a big butt. He's not going to get answered easily. And he's also another Falcon style effect late game. And I have no 5-drops in the deck now, but now I have Cassian, who's kind of a pseudo 5-drop. And he comes in readied when he's smuggled. And let me just explain this to you. If I play Poe on 5 resources and untap him and I attack for 6 to base, discarding card, doing 2 more damage to base, Poe does a maximum of 8 damage. If I play Cassian on 5 resources, he's going to do 3 damage to base. Hypothetically speaking, there's like nothing out there interacting, right? Just for the sake of math. And then I play a Fleet Lieutenant because he is a relevant type. You know, Poe is not a rebel. Cassian is. And so Cassian does 5 damage to base. And so in a way, it does take more actions. Cassian can still do 8 damage to base pretty reasonably, where Poe can only do 8, but I also have to discard a card. Obviously, Poe can do more if I use Surprise Strike or Heroic Sacrifice or something like that. But discarding cards does suck with Poe, and that's why I don't even like playing him with Sneak Attack, because Sneak Attack is already playing a card to cheat out a card, and then Poe attacking and dumping my entire hand. If my opponent has any sort of comeback, I've just lost the game because I've ripped my hand apart. And that just isn't good in competitive play, in my opinion. It's too risky in this deck specifically, and Cassian is a much better fit. It also allows us to pivot into ground if space is really locked up by some of these annoying space decks with all the Sentinels that they're playing. All right, so let's move on to 4-drops. K2 is K2. Still very, very good. Great sneak attack target. If he dies, does damage to base, does everything we want. If he's answered, he just, destroys our opponent. So I love that card. All right, so let's talk about the gunship. So I took this card out and then I put it back in. And there's a reason why. If you go into SWODB or you go into a database of some kind and you type in ambush and you check the space checkbox to look for every card in the game that has ambush and is a space unit, there are 4 ships in the game. 2 of them are green and 2 of them are yellow-white. And both of the yellow-white ones are in this deck. Ambush is very good because when you play it, it immediately does something to the board. It can clean up problematic units. And this being a 3/4, it's got good stats for that line, right? We can kill Phantom with this. If my opponent plays a turn 2 Phantom and I don't have a space unit, I can claim. Then I can play Gunship, kill the Phantom. I only take 2 damage. I have a unit, they don't. And that is exactly what I want to do with this deck. And it allows this deck to be a lot more flexible. And I've found that Tarkin deck is very, very good. I actually played online in the Take the Initiative tournament, and that Tarkin deck actually almost won both games against Yellow Sabine. In a way, that deck is actually faster. If they can get a Phantom out and then they can start playing Triple Dark Raids and cycling through their deck and getting all those experience tokens on that Phantom, they can turn that Phantom into a 7/7 and 8/8 very, very fast. And, 2 attacks, I'm dead. And that's a problem. And so the Gunship is just the main deck answer for that Tarkin deck. Actually, it's a main deck answer for Phantom everywhere. It just kills Phantom. It's very good. And if I don't like it, you can just resource it. And it's really nice. And it can protect space. If my opponent has a 3-power space unit, I can just play this card, kill it, keep my A-Wings alive, keep my red 3s alive. It just allows me to kill something and put a unit out, which is kind of what you need to do in aggro. Next is a Valiant Assault Ship. I did not like this card at first, but again, I was in the Take the Initiative and tournament, and I played against a Green Ray deck that had 9 Sentinels in the deck, 3 Concord Dawns, 3 Bright Hopes, and 3 Village Protectors. And I played 2 Valiant Assault Ships in one of the games, and I played 1 Valiant Assault Ship in the other game. I ignored their Sentinel, went directly to base, and with a Surprise Strike and a Heroic Sack, I was able to do 5, 6, 7, 8, 13, 15 damage and 2 attacks. Crazy. I mean, you just stop resourcing, and your opponent is going to continue to resource. You know, and especially like in a Ray deck, like if I'm going to prevent them from deploying their leader, that's very good. That's still winning, right? That's 3 restore that they're not getting. And so the Valiant Assault Ship just gets around the Sentinel meta. This card needs to be played in Green Sabine. If you're not playing it, find a spot. It's very good. It's the best ship that was printed for aggro in set 2. It plays mind games with your opponent. It does massive damage and it rewards high skill players. Both of these ships reward high skill players because of the utility they provide. You know, if you don't know your meta very well, I don't know if you should play Gunship or the Valiant Assault Ship, but I'm playing 2 of each. And what I'm doing right now is some of them are bad into other matchups and they immediately come out. Like the Gunship is bad against control decks. So I take that out and put in Sparks, right? So you can actually like take these ships. They're very good flex slots to take out for sideboarding. And I like that. It's like a good shortcut because they're not rebels. They're good into specific decks. They're good on their own. But if they're not great, you can just take them out and sideboard them. They're great sideboard targets in the deck. And your deck is still going to be fine, right? Into some of these decks. Like if I'm playing a control deck, taking out the Gunship for something else is totally fine. All right. So staying in line with this, the Falcon, I really like this card. I saw it. I was mad. I felt like Cunning Heroism got shafted in set 2. In some ways they did. But the more I played with this card, I realized how good it actually was. And let me explain it this way. When I played Yellow Sabine in set 1, I played only a couple top end cards. There were a lot of times where I would draw my 6 and I'd have a good hand, but I had a top end card in my hand and I would resource it. And it was basically gone forever for the rest of the game. And that can suck. And so being able to draw this early and instantly, you know, resourcing it turn 1 or turn 2, knowing that late game you have a play that can really surprise your opponent is very strong. And for example, you know, let's say my opponent clears my board, they have 6, 7 life left. If I just smuggle this in and then claim, I can surprise strike or heroic sack and just do insane damage, where especially in space, that's very hard to answer. And right now, if I were to play a 5/5 on the ground, there's so many cards in the game that would just blow that thing out of the water and Death Star it out of existence. But this Falcon probably is not going to get answered as easily. Are there answers? Absolutely. It's very difficult to answer this unless they have like a Vanquish. There's not many space units that would kill this. And it just, you can just win the game out of nowhere. I also like ambushing it to clear a unit. If they have a Sentinel out there, like a Bright Hope or something like that, and it has damage marked on it, I can just ambush this sucker in, kill it, and I'm probably not winning still, but the next turn, my first attack is going to be Surprise Strike on the 5/5 Falcon, or whatever health is left Falcon, and winning the game. Does something when it hits the board, rewards high skill, it smuggle lines, ambush is always good. It's one of the only other ships in the game with ambush. And it's good in tournament play where it gives you options and you don't want to be locked into a loss when you feel like you're losing the game. This allows you to have different play lines to victory. And Smuggle is very good. Smuggle is very, very good. And I was not even playing Cassian until I realized Cassian just gives my deck better variance, where I can, hey, I don't have anything good to play in my hand. I have all events. I can still smuggle in a Cassian and still get damage to base, right? It just allows you to continue to always have something to do and never have a dead draw. And that can happen in aggro where you just like draw double heroic sacrifice. I mean, it happens a lot. It does. Or, you draw double rebel assault in Green Sabine. I mean, it's not all the time, but it does happen. And when it does happen, you have something else to play, right? You have a smuggle card to play and continue to provide board presence. And this card is very good. Also looks beautiful in hyperspace foil. Go look at my YouTube short where I open all my hyperspace foils that I bought, that I pre-ordered. All right, so why not Jeddah City? Waste of an action. Memeified. 5 health is relevant in the Sabine mirror, and there's cooler art available. And that art is Coronet City. I mean, look at that. There's like a Star Destroyer, in the background. It's pretty sick. And then like a land speeder. Art's amazing. Probably would just play this because it's cool and it's new. I don't know. Jeddah City is just not good enough. I wish, honestly, if Jeddah City give any unit -4, it probably would be playable. Even then, maybe not. But the fact that it's non-leader, I mean, it's a problem. All right. Sabine here, I made this with some arts custom that I made. Synergy with the deck, high toughness, earliest deploy besides Lando, and ping is still extremely relevant. This is the same slide I've used to explain Sabine. Card's very good still. Yeah, I think Sabine is still very, very strong. Not much to say there. So let's dig into the sideboard. All right, so I have some interesting sideboard decisions here. So first off, shoot first. We need to do 4 damage to Concord Dawn and kill it. And we have some ways of doing that, right? We have red 3 with Falcon. We have red 3 with A-Wing. We have Wing Leader on A-Wing. We have Wing Leader on Alliance X-Wing. So we have lots of ways of killing it. I want more. I want more ways to kill this dumb unit. The fact that they printed a Sentinel that can be played on turn 2 that's that good in space is very annoying. And shoot first basically allows our A-Wing to hit it for 4, or our red 3, or our Falcon, and just we take no damage in return. So, Tarkin Town can't target anything. And what we do is we probably take out sneak attack to maintain high for a cause. And that just also, shoot first is a pump that we can just go to base for an extra 1. And so it does provide a little bit of interesting options there. I thought about playing it main deck, but sneak attack is still too good into non-Sentinel decks. But for sure, bring in shoot first. Spec Force for Sentinels, probably take out like a Leia or something for the Spec Force. To just really make sure that we can shut off Sentinels. Bamboozle, 3 of. Why? That Tarkin deck's annoying. There's Boba decks playing experience tokens on the Phantom. It's very, very, very good into Green Sabine. Like if they play Poe, I just like claim and I play Bamboozle for 0, shutting Poe down. They've already popped ECL with Poe. And like, wow, you spent 5 resources to do almost nothing. And I shut it down for another turn. It's pretty good. And I've won a lot of games in testing that way, like a lot. And if I draw Bamboozles, I like win. So Spark of Rebellion, really, really good into control. And L3 capture is annoying. Like if my opponent captures a Falcon, I would love to smuggle in an L3 and just like recapture it. And what's interesting is Falcon says enters play ready. So when Falcon, it is not a when played. It doesn't say when played ready. It just says enters play ready. So Falcon is one of those units that if you capture it, it still enters play ready. And so if you rescue it with L3, you can just go 3 to base again. And there has been a lot of lines where my opponent plays Relentless Pursuit or Legal Authority, and then I play an L3, get it back, attack for 3. It's very strong. Love it. Super good. And so this is the Sabine deck, and I'm going to be taking this to GenCon. Let me just get that back up on the screen there. I'll be taking this deck to GenCon. I think this deck has a lot of lines into every kind of deck we could play right now. I've tested it quite a bit. It's got the core Rebel, so it's not too risky to play. It's got really good top-end ships. And I think this deck is very strong, and it can pretty much beat any deck. It can beat Green Sabine, it can beat Yellow Boba, it can beat not over 50% necessarily, right? It's all about the draw, but it has very good win rates into every deck. And so this is the deck I'm playing when I go to GenCon. So if you're playing me, pull up my video, give it a view, check out the deck list. And I hope if y'all are seeing this, you pick up this list or even alter your lists with this. Couple key takeaways I'd say is Poe is not great in this deck for some reason. I tried it. I wanted it to work. I have a couple copies. Like, why would I not want to play a $50 card? It just isn't good. And then, man, that Valiant Assault Ship should be played in every single aggro deck. Like, you should be playing this in Green Sabine. You should be playing it in Yellow Sabine. It just completely gets around those Sentinels. And when you stop resourcing on, or like if you play Recker and Green Sabine, pop your resource. Now you're below your opponent, and Valiant hits for 5, and Recker probably hit for 4 or 5 with Overwhelm. You just got to play that Assault Chip 2 of or 3 of. It's super, super good. One of the best cards in the game. And so problems for this deck, Sentinels. I'd just say Sentinels, that Tarkin deck is really annoying. I think it's bizarrely that deck can beat Green Sabine even. If they can get a Phantom out and Green Sabine doesn't have a space unit to ECL and they pump it up, it's game over. Like, I don't think Green Sabine can win. It's just too good. That deck is extremely explosive. It also has swoop downs, so they can kill your turn 1 play, your turn 2 play, and their units are taking 0 damage in return. It's just such a good deck. It does lose to like Boba and stuff like that, but I need to have ways to basically beat those decks, and I have that in the sideboard. So the deck list is made public. It's down below. Let me know what y'all think. Please give me a like and a subscribe. Probably 100 hours of testing went into this list, into determining what cards. I mean, there have been so many versions of this deck. You might see this and be like, oh, this is not that creative. That was because it was a process of elimination, of cutting out every other variation, not every variation, but every like reasonable variation that I could see. And this is the list that I came out with that is testing well. And it's a very fun deck to play still, has very good mulligans, has very good turn 1 plays. And, hopefully I'll get a top 16 at GenCon, and I'll be playing those KTOD guys. So see y'all later.